So I watched Noel Miller's comedy special, Stop Crying. No, I mean, that's the name of the show, but are you crying? Are you okay? And let me tell you, that was a roller coaster. For context, I've been a longtime fan of Noel Miller. Okay, maybe not a real one. I'll be the first to admit the only reason I knew he existed was because of Cody Ko. Oh, you know, the retired Vine star turned YouTube commentator turned fitness influencer. I don't know what's going on anymore. Anyways, Noel is his partner in crime, basically. They have a podcast, they started Tiny Meat Gang, they've even gone on tour together, which is why I was actually pleasantly surprised when I saw that Noel was touring individually. I thought, well, this could go one of two ways. Either he has no idea how to convert his individual YouTube content into a stand-up routine and he flails in front of his audience of 17-year-olds, or we're gonna see a side of Noel we've never seen before. Because here's how I see it, okay? Noel has always had this wry, dark, somewhat edgy sense of humor that complements his style of videos perfectly. You know, reading tweets and stories from his subscribers, doing satirical therapy sessions, etc., etc. And the whole internet agrees that his sense of humor complements Cody Ko's brilliantly. The That's Cringe videos on Cody's channel remain some of his most popular, and that wouldn't even be remotely possible without the banter, the comical rapport that those two have grown over the years. They're always trying to outdo each other's roasts until someone, usually Noel, takes it a little too far.
I can't say the joke. What is it? That was bad.
Oh god, I can already tell where this is going.
Look.
Dude, I'm definitely absolutely censoring.
My point is, you take Noel out of his YouTube sphere, you put him on stage, you take away Cody. What do you get? Well, spoiler alert, it is not what I was expecting at all. Let's get into it. Alright, we're gonna go through this bit by bit because when I was watching this for the first time, I could tell immediately which ones were gonna work and which ones weren't. So first of all, to start it all off, I'm back on the R word. Okay, this one really set the tone for me because, if I'm being honest, I didn't like it at all, and I could tell the audience was quite taken aback. Again, this is no ordinary comedy show audience. This is Noel Miller's fan base that saw this being advertised on his channel and bought a ticket. But we'll get back to that.
I know some of you, it's your first time watching stand-up. Make some noise for yourselves, yeah.
And before you say anything, this isn't...
Oh, you shouldn't joke about the R word.
I was born in 2001, all right? There was a point in my life when the R word was standard vernacular. Let's not get that twisted. But in retrospect, having watched the entire show, I think this one may have been his weakest bit. Now, I'm no comedian. Clearly, I'm just the one who makes fun of the comedians, but the joke order must be one of the first things you think of when trying to put on a good show. Of course, you can't start out with the strongest bit, because then no one will remember it by the end, but you can't start out with the weakest one either. And for this specific audience, again, we're gonna get back to that, I think the way it started kind of dampened the jokes to come. Because then I started seeing Noel doing all these pauses after his jokes, waiting on a bigger reaction or something. Like with his joke about marriage, which I still felt was a little misplaced.
I did have to stop fisting her though, you know. Why? Well, it's because my ring, it kept hitting her IUD.
And then we got into the bit about IUDs, which was honestly the first time I chuckled while watching this. But I began to notice something else. Okay, not only was Noel pausing, but he was also laughing heartily at his own jokes.
Yeah.
Again, disclaimer, don't know anything about comedy, but unless your jokes are Dave Chappelle level, I don't really think that's the move. Also, Dave Chappelle doesn't even laugh at his own jokes, so I started realizing that sometimes the audience was laughing simply because he was laughing, which I'm sure is how interactions on his YouTube channel go. But again, this is stand-up. It's gotta be a little different, right? And I think this comment sums up this disconnect perfectly. Seeing Noel laugh at his own jokes and smiling before he completes them is so funny and comforting. His laugh makes me laugh. I mean, what did I say? What did I just tell you?
It's always at this point in the show, the vibe switches. Half of you are looking at me crazy, you know. Damn, bro, this is nothing like your YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly, bro. That's exactly how I feel. And on the surface, I don't think this is an issue, but it actually affected the show in a very real way. Take this clip, for example, when he gets into his 9/11 bit. Yup, you heard me right.
It's crazy because even you know... No, you don't know what I'm about to say. You don't know what I'm about to say.
Now, regardless of whether you believe that 9/11 jokes are, I don't know, okay now, that is exactly the type of joke that would have been censored in a That's Cringe video. Doesn't mean it's not, you know, generally funny. Also, his follow-up to this punchline was even funnier, not gonna lie. Okay, look, I know I've been super critical of the show up to this point. I'm not the one up there in front of thousands of people who have probably never seen my face before unless it's behind a computer screen. Like, part of me just wants to be able to laugh at the jokes Noel is putting out because I love him as a creator. And another part wants him to succeed in his stand-up career, which I know is going to take some work based on this show. But I do want to highlight the things I really liked about this show because this was the point that I went from wanting to close the tab to actually invested. First of all, Noel's callbacks were great. The JFK one absolutely floored me, even though the audience didn't really seem to quite understand. There was also some great physical comedy in there. Oh, besides this one. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say that the camera work didn't absolutely save some of those bits, but hey, who's counting? And that doesn't make any sense, but we're rolling with it. And now we get to the meaty part of the special, where Noel gets down and dirty, exploring his childhood trauma. And I gotta say, whether you're a fan of that kind of comedic unraveling or not, well, I am, and this is my channel, so shut the fuck up. This section was deeply personal. It reminded me a lot of Daniel Sloss, whose style of comedy centers around the death of his sister when she was very young. Heavy stuff, but his goal as a comedian, and I think this is true of Noel too, is to allow people to laugh at something that's not funny. That's a hard feat in 2023. The bit about his mom and the emotional and physical abuse he took from her puts the entire show into perspective. It's a look into Noel's life that we never would have seen in his YouTube videos. And I think that's because the stage is actually the right place to do it. Besides therapy, please, please, please do not start a comedy career before talking to a professional. Please, for the love of God. But again, in retrospect, this bit allowed me to ease up a little, to understand where all those jokes at the beginning may have been coming from. And I honestly think the rest of the show went pretty smoothly. The edginess of the jokes didn't really change, but Noel set the scene for that kind of comedy, which he didn't do at the beginning. This is important. If you're gonna come out swinging in your comedy show with jokes about the R word, just know that you're aiming for a very specific audience. And that is a perfect segue into this comment, which I think sums up the show as a whole pretty accurately. I really want to see Noel perform in a comedy club. An audience that isn't catered to him would be much more interesting, and I think it would really help him grow as a comic. Now this is what I'm talking about. Remember what I said earlier about Noel's audience being 17-year-olds? Well, it turns out I was wrong. According to this Reddit post, it's more like 19 to 25-year-olds, like me. But it's still a very specific audience nonetheless. An audience that's completely tailored, conditioned to Noel's internet content. And logically, one might come to the conclusion that this audience was not ready for what Noel had to offer. But at the same time, once again, there's this disconnect between his audience and his routine. Because on one hand, it felt like the entire show was trying to cater or relate to his younger viewers.
I can look into this crowd and I know exactly who's here. Like, to a T, you know? You know, a lot of you have been watching me a long time.
But then there were just some jokes that didn't get the reaction he was hoping for. My love for Noel wants him to improve his comedy and become more successful outside of his fan base, which would require, you know, performing in comedy clubs, dive bars, putting in the real blood, sweat, and tears that every other up-and-coming comedian has to do every time they perform. Shout out to my comedian friends, you know who you are. And I saw under this comment that apparently he has done this in cities like Atlanta, which is great. My point with this being, in a sold-out amphitheater in LA with thousands of seats, a hip-hop song welcome you to the stage, and an audience so in love with you that they'd never boo you no matter how bad your jokes might be, you're not going to improve. But you're also not going to be making bank. Okay, that's all I have to say. I'm really happy to see Noel branching out, and I hope this venture really transforms him as a creator. And yeah, sure, I'll recommend the show to anyone who was bored and high watching YouTube on a Sunday night like I was doing. But no matter what happens, we'll never forget his humble beginnings.
Hey, it's your boy, Skinny Penis.
All right, I'll see you later, I guess, or not. I don't really care. Fuck you, stop crying, go away.